Our third speaker is Brian McEnaney, and it's going to be adsorption in microporous carbon.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. When I was preparing the one or two additional overheads that I needed for this afternoon, doing it this morning, I realised that I forgot to buy John a birthday card, so I thought I'd include my birthday wishes on the title thing. I apologise for that, but at least I didn't send it by email, which is the other way it might have happened. Also, on a personal note, I'm perhaps one of the few people here who was neither supervised by John Gregg nor examined by John Gregg for his PhD. However, I do have a connection because I studied for my first degree in chemistry and my PhD at the University of Hull, where John Gregg taught before he came here to Exeter, and no doubt the vibrations were there when I started my study. And I also remember, as an undergraduate, the first time I saw John Gregg was he came down to Hull to give a seminar, colloquium. And I know you won't mind me saying this, but among us undergraduates, we used to look at our speakers very closely, and one or two of my colleagues said, he looks a rather pale, frail sort of man. And somebody else said, oh yes, I've heard he's been exposed to mercury poisoning with the high vacuum equipment that he used. And the general consensus was in the late 1950s that he wasn't long for this world. So perhaps mercury's better for you than we thought. Roger's introduced a number of the points that I want to talk about, and hopefully that will save some time. These are some high-resolution electron micrographs. The first one is of a coal extract heated at 2,500 or so, and it's graphitic. You can see the lines here represent the resolution of the basal planes in this graphitic structure. By contrast, this is an activated anthracite, and you can see that the structure is a tangled, disordered structure when compared with the graphite single crystal. That's a well-recognized feature of carbons, activated carbons, and this is a diagram taken from a book by Donnet and Bansal on activated carbons, showing one of a number of sketches illustrating the type of disordered structure that you get in activated carbons. In fact, you can summarize the microstructure of activated carbons in this way. The structure is a tangled network of effective carbon layer planes, and the micropore are the spaces between these layer planes, and therefore they're mainly slit-shaped. There is absorption evidence for that. There's also an aperture cavity microporous network that comes from this structure, and control of that network can give you molecular sieve action, which is exploited in engineering applications. They're low temperature carbons, so there are significant amounts of heteroelements, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, sulfur. And these are bound mainly to the periphery of the layer planes, and control of them can influence absorption properties. Then the process of activation tends to remove secondary carbon at micropore constructions. That's carbon that's formed during the carbonization process by decomposition of volatiles. And you eventually widen the micropores into mesopores, so that with well-activated carbons you often have a micropore mesopore type of pore size distribution. Where you have macropores in them, they're often the relics of the cellular structure of the precursor. If you think of activated coconut shell carbons or activated carbons produced from coals, you can see clear evidence that the macropores are relics of the precursor cellular structure. Well, what I wanted to talk about was some of the work that we've been doing over the last 10 years, I suppose. And it's been driven by that view of the structure of activated carbons. They're not nice ordered structures like zeolites, and perhaps zeolites aren't particularly well ordered, but by comparison with activated carbons they are. And so we've been looking at the absorption in activated carbons over the years based on that postulate, that their absorption is dominated by their heterogeneous micropore structure. So we've looked at absorption equations dealing with absorption heterogeneity. When you consider this in the most general sense, you can break down adsorption heterogeneity into two broad classes. Heterogeneity arising from the surface and heterogeneity arising from the structure of the adsorbent. By surface heterogeneity, I mean obvious things like variations in the adsorbent interaction over the external surface and over the surfaces of large pores where the adsorption is fairly straightforward. And adsorption due to things like different crystal orientation, speaking very generally, presence of defects in the structure, heteroatoms, etc. That's surface heterogeneity. And the other type of heterogeneity, structural heterogeneity, it derives from the structure of the material, particularly when it's porous. This is the heterogeneity of the pore structure. We can envisage that you have capillary condensation in mesopores and micropore filling in micropores, obviously, and the nature of the pore size distribution will influence that type of structural heterogeneity. For capillary condensation, obviously, we can use the Kelvin equation to describe that process. But as Roger hinted, there's really no formal, widely accepted model yet for micropore filling. Now, to model absorption heterogeneity, we have the GAI, which Roger's already touched on, so I can go quickly over this slide. More or less the same formulation as Roger. Here's the overall isotherm. Here is the local isotherm, and here is the probability density function for the heat of absorption. I've stressed that in this usual form here, the contributions of surface heterogeneity and structural heterogeneity are not factorized. They're both lumped together in the Q term. And I think that's a problem that's not been addressed, as far as I'm aware, in any detail. Now, as Roger said, there is a choice of local isotherms, the theta function here, and to make a choice of local isotherms involves making explicit assumptions concerning the mechanism of absorption, as Roger hinted. You might imagine that if surface coverage was the dominant process occurring, then an appropriate isotherm would be the Langmuir or possibly the BET. If you wanted to take into account of adsorbate interaction, you could use equations like the Fowler-Guggenheim equation. If pore filling was the dominant process, then you could use the Kelvin equation or versions of the Dubinin equation, which Roger talked about. And you can also use something which I'll come on to in a minute, which actually links, I think, with David Nicholson's talk, which follows mine. You can use molecular models of pore filling processes. Now, point I want to emphasize, I agree with a lot, probably everything. There's a lot to take in, but that which I took in, I think I agreed with in what Roger said, and I'm looking forward to talking to him about it. But one point he didn't emphasize with regard to the solution of the GAI is that it's an ill-posed problem. That is to say, there are many different combinations of the local isotherm theta and the distribution function f of q, which can be fitted to the adsorption data. There's no unique combination of those two, which can lead to a satisfactory fit. And when you look in the literature, there are essentially three models, three approaches that have been used to the solution of the equation. First is the analytical form, where you select a local isotherm such as the Langmuir and an f of q like the Gaussian, possibly the gamma function, which together will allow an exact integration of the GAI to give you a form for the overall isotherm. And a lot of the early work was in that area. And then another approach, which we've done some work on, is the numerical approach, where you select the local isotherm and find the best value of f of q by some numerical method. And we did some work, this was my colleague Tim Mays, apart from regularization. I won't go into that here, but it's essentially a statistical method trying to achieve a best fit to the isotherm. And the third approach, which Roger mentioned, is the condensation approximation, where you assume that theta is a step function. He already mentioned this. And I was going to say, but I think he's made the point very clearly, that you can derive the well-known Dubinin redistributive equation if you assume a condensation approximation. Now, a practical objective of this type of work would be to obtain micropore size distributions, and this is something that we've been working on. There are well-known methods for determining micropore size distributions in macropores. You can use multipore symmetry techniques. There are well-known methods for mesopores. Dolomore Heel, just to mention one, is a well-known method. Many of these find their way onto computer programs, but there isn't as yet a widely accepted method for obtaining micropore size distributions. But I think there's the method that I want to talk about a little bit here, and on which we've done a little bit of work, offers, I think, a new approach, which as far as obtaining micropore size distributions in activated carbons is concerned, offers a lot of promise. And that's the use of molecular simulations. And no doubt David will talk more about this, but very briefly what you do is you take a specific shape pore and you put adsorbate molecules into them. You assume some sort of interaction function between the molecules themselves and between the molecules and the pore surface, and you can derive an isotherm based on that type of model. And Nick Quirk and his colleagues at BP in '89 published a paper in the journal Carbon where they applied one of these molecular simulation methods to adsorption of nitrogen between graphite basal planes. And what they did was they formulated the GAI in a way which is convenient for their model, because their model gives a density function as a function of pressure and pore width for pores width W. I think if I go to the next slide, this probably might make it clearer. This is a sketch of a type of isotherm that is obtained for a molecular model of adsorption of nitrogen 77K in slit-shaped pores formed from graphite basal planes for a given pore width, for a given spacing between the graphite basal planes. And the general features of this are quite interesting. You start off, what we're plotting here is a normalized density of the absorbed phase as a function of relative pressure. And you start off with what you might call a low density phase at low relative pressures, and then suddenly there is something like a condensation process, and then there is a high density phase where the density increases with relative pressure, approaching the value for the bulk liquid. That's a normalized density there. First point to make is that this condensation step is a strong function of pore width, so that the shape of the molecular isotherms, these isotherms from individual pores, are strong functions of pore width. So it's possible to relate these isotherms to pore width. That's the first point. The second point, which is interesting in relation to Roger's work, is that you could see, if you were to write the condensation approximation on this isotherm, it would be like that. So the condensation approximation could be regarded as a crude approximation to the sort of isotherm that's been derived here. Now what Seton Walton and Quirk did was to express the overall isotherm, which is the amount adsorbed divided by the total pore volume here, just pore volume over there, as instead of the local isotherm, they have the local density function, which is essentially a sort of local isotherm, and they have instead of having a distribution function of energy, they have a distribution function of pore width. Now, one still has the problem of ill-posedness here to deal with. And what these authors have done is selected a bimodal log normal distribution function for F over W, and then used best fit procedures to match this isotherm to the overall isotherm. we have used we've used their isotherm, like model isotherm data to obtain a similar approach. We've used a two-parameter Vidal function for F over W to fit the data. The reason for this is that, well, there's a point I want to make about selection of distribution functions for F over W or F over Q. Roger showed that you can select a wide range of functions and fit data, but there are some tests I think you can apply to F over Q, and they have to do with Occam's razor type tests. First of all, we know from fundamental studies that the adsorption energy in a micropore is probably no more than twice the adsorption energy on the free surface. So the range of Q you select should be over a factor of 2, and the lower bound of Q in your distribution function should be close to that on the free surface. Functions where the functions like Gaussian functions extend to infinity are inherently unsuitable from that if you use that sort of approach. The second type of test you can apply to your approach to using the GAI is, do the results make sense in relation to what you know about the activated carbons you're looking at? For example, if you look at an activated series of carbons, do the distributions that you get out from the application of the GAI make sense in terms of the pore widening mechanisms that we all know take place when carbons are activated? And so there's more one can do than simply achieving best fit in applying the GAI. Finally, so I know we pushed for time, this is just a result that we obtained. We've been looking at some space activated carbon fibers, and applying the approach of Seaton, Walton and Quirk, we obtain a micropore size distribution as a function here of activation temperature for these carbons. I don't want to talk in detail about the significance of the shapes of these curves. I just simply want to illustrate the sort of results that can be obtained. So in conclusion, I think that the use of molecular modeling that's certainly come onto the scene as far as activated carbons is concerned is a very significant development and will be helpful in studying these carbons, but I think one still is faced with the problem of representing the heterogeneity of these carbons, for example, through the GAI, and even here, even with the molecular modeling approach, one is still faced with the problems of ill-posedness that I talked about briefly here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for being on time.
Thank you.
By the way, some of you may have realised already that clock is bust. It's now tea time, and tea is being served in the main foyer. I suggest that we come back around 4 o'clock or whenever you get fed up, and we'll resume the second part. Okay?
So you are accepting we have to wait for this.
John, you'll have to come in a few minutes.
Yeah, that's all right.
So we're recording every minute. You're taking all right. I think we're having our picture taken, so Road by road.
Take some more later.
Right.